right, welcome back from the break. Hopefully, everyone was able to enjoy a fulfilling lunch or other and have come back ready to learn even more about electronic drug registration and listing, as we still have a fantastic lineup of presentations planned for this afternoon. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next set of presenters who will be speaking on the subject of listing your drug using CDER Direct. In this session, we will hear from Troy Koo, Technical Information Specialist, and Dr. Yogesh Paruthi, Consumer Safety Officer, as well as returning from earlier sessions, Dr. Vikas Arora, Consumer Safety Officer, and Dr. Tasneem Hussain, Consumer Safety Officer. Again, all coming from the Drug Registration and Listing Branch of the Division of Labeling, Registration, and Unapproved Drugs in the Office of Unapproved and Labeling Compliance within FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. So now, please join me in welcoming our next up presenter, Troy Koo.
Welcome back. Hope everyone have a good lunch or breakfast or dinner, wherever you are. My name is Troy Koo. I'm a Technical Information Specialist with the Drug Registration and Listing Branch within the Office of Compliance. By the end of this session, the attendees should be able to create a listing SBL, enumerate data element required for the drug listing, explain the timing for initial drug listing to FDA. So drug listing, who have to do it? Basically, if you are required to register, then you are required to list your drug products under 21 CFR 207.41. There are very few exceptions to that. If you are a contract manufacturer or the CMO, you must list under your own label code. With regard to the CMO to the manufacturer for private label distributor, such as Walgreens, CVS, they don't participate in manufacturing process and they are exempt from registration. CMO who make drugs for them will have to list under CMO label code, and then they also have to list under the PLD label code. However, PLD may elect to list on their own as an authorized agent for the CMO. So what listing information must the registrant submit? For the manufacturer, each registrant must provide a listing information for each drug is manufactured for commercial distribution under 21 CFR 207.49. Repackagers per 21 CFR 207.53, the NDC assigned to each finished drug received by the registrant for the repack or relabeling with the exemption of medical gases. Each such NDC must be associated with the corresponding NDC for the repack or relabeling drugs, also known as a source NDC. Salvagers, a registrant who perform only salvaging with respect to the drug must provide the lot number and the expiration date of the salvage drug product under 21 CFR 207.54. So when the drug listing have to happen? Initially, drug listing have to be submitted within 3 days of the initial registration per 21 CFR 207.45. Any update have to be done every June and December. However, there is no need to wait to submit an update. In fact, we encourage firms to update as soon as possible under 21 CFR 207.57. Lastly, with regard to your annual listing certification and update to your drug listing SBL, certify to your listing for the next calendar year. For example, if you make an update to your drug listing today, then you don't need to recertify your listing for 2024 per 21 CFR 207.57. And now I will start the live demonstration on how to submit a drug listing SBL using CDER. Before we start, I just want to make sure that you have a label code and the registration information is ready. Okay, without any of those information, you won't be able to go far. So let's get started. So I'm going to log in to CDER. Oh, that's not good. All right, let's try it again. Okay, so now that we're in on the left-hand side, as you can see there's other type of submission. Before listing, we're going to select drug listing and certification. And then we're going to select create new upload file. So as you can see, there are two options here. One to create a new listing and the other one to import existing drug listing. If you have a file that you would like to upload, this would be the option that you want to select, okay? But for this demonstration, I'm going to create a new drug listing. And then for the document type, um, you can see there are other submission type that you can select. So I'm going to select the human prescription drugs, and I'm going to select continue. Next, we have a header details. So in this section, as you can see, everything is having pre-populated for you, so you don't need to do anything unless you want to change the effect date, okay? Otherwise, you can leave it blank. Next, label of detail, okay? Um, Here you will include the label name and label done um, of whoever marketing this drug, okay? So let's say I'm gonna call as CDER LLC, and then I'm gonna make up a label of done number here, okay? And then next, the registrant detail. Notice that this section is not required, but if you are a contract manufacturer and you are listing on behalf of the PLD, then you would put the information here. But since this is not required, so I'm just going to leave it blank. In the next section, we have either add products or establishment. Okay, um, you can do either one. Doesn't matter which one you want to do first. So I'm going to select establishment first because it's quicker for me. The product a little longer. So to add the establishment, you just click on add establishment here, and then you have to fill in the blank in here. So the establishment name, let's say workshop, and then the establishment done before. Okay, so if you want to keep this business relationship information confidential, you can select this confidential box here. Otherwise, you can leave it blank. Okay, and then under the business operation, let's say this workshop is a manufacturer or whatever. It can be a repacker, whatever. Then you will select one of the option in here. So I'm going to select manufacturer, and then I'm going to provide a product NDC. So I'm just going to make one up here. Now that I have filled everything out, I can click on Say Supplement. And now you can see under Supplement, I have a workshop. If you have one or more establishment that involved in the process, you can add all of them in the establishment by follow the same step. Okay. Next, it's going to be products. So to add a product, you click on Add Product. Okay, under the product data elements, okay, you have to provide the product NDC number. So again, I'm going to make one up here. 1, 2, 3, and then proprietary name. Let's call it ibuprofen. And then suffix. I'm just going to leave that blank. Non-proprietary name. Again, the same. And then a DEA schedule. This is not a DEA schedule product, so I'm just gonna leave that blank. But if yours is a DEA scheduler, then you will have to select one of the option in here. Okay. And for the dosage form, I'm going to select tablet. And source NDCs. So since I'm a manufacturer, I'm not a repacker, so I don't have to provide source NDC. If you're a repacker, you have to provide a source NDC, and this is where you will enter it. Okay. And then the route administration is going to be oral. Okay. And then next, marketing detail. So marketing status, you want to select active. Active meaning that you are marketing this product. Complete meaning you're delisting it. So I'm gonna, for this demonstration, we want to select active. And then you have to provide when is the product going on the market. It's going on today. Okay, next. It's a marketing category. Marketing category is what you authorize for marketing this drug. Okay, so let's say I submit a prescription for this drug, so I'm going to select and uh, and then you have to provide the application number here. Okay, and that's it for the marketing category. Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next section. It is ingredient. So in the red box, add ingredients. So here you can add all the ingredients that are associated with this drugs, okay? So for the type, there are several options here. If you're not sure which one to select, you can download, there's a file called OTC Active Ingredient spreadsheet that posted on the OTC website. You can download them and then you can look it up. Um, I have the hyperlink under my helpful resources after this. So for this one, I will select active ingredient. Active is basic of the strength. And then the ingredient unit name is going to be ibuprofen. So you have to select it from the list. You can't just type it in, okay? So the active moiety is going to be the same. And then numerator strings, let's say, I don't know, 800. And the unit of measure is going to be mg. And then denominator strength is going to be 1. So there's going to be a string conversion section later on if you're not sure how to convert them, okay? 1. Then say the ingredient. Now that you can see the ibuprofen has been added as one of the ingredients. So if you have multiple ingredients, you just follow the same process and then add all the ingredients. But do keep in mind that for the active ingredient, you do not need to provide the strength. Okay, you can leave that blank. Next, it's going to be product image. If you have the image of the product, this is where you would upload. Okay, this is not where you can upload the 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 content label for the content of label. Okay, read the little important note right here. Okay, since I don't have one, so I'm just going to skip this. And then next, characteristics. I do need to add this. So, but you have to add one by one. So let's add the first one. Uh, so the color is going to be white. Save. And then you add another one. Imprint's going to be, I don't know, 18. and then score. So if you don't know what 1, 2, and 3 mean, you can toggle to the left here and click on this, and it'll tell you what it means 1, 2, and 3. So for this one, I'm going to select 1, which is no scores. Save, and then add one. And the shapes, okay, it's going to be caps. So, and then one more. The size. So I'm going to say 18. Save, and that's it. You're done with the characteristic section. Next, it's going to be adding the packaging. So click on Add Package. So you have to provide the packet NDC code. Okay. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Have to be a 10 digits. And then the packet type, it's going to be bottle. Let's just say it's going to be about 30. The unit of measure is going to be 1. So make sure the unit of measure has to be the same as the unit of measure with your um, denominator unit of measure. And for combination type, you can see there's a few options here. So this is not a combination product, so I will select type 0. And then again, marketing status have to be active. Marketing start date is the day that this package is going to be on the market. You can change the date if you like. Otherwise, you can leave it and then say packet. And there you go. Now I have one packet added. If you have a second packet that you would like to add, you will follow the same step, okay? And then assign a different package code. Okay, so the last part is the content of labeling. So let me say this first. And click on the content of labeling right here. So unfortunately, there's no way for you to add a content as a single PDF file. You have to add it by each section. So just follow the packet listing that you have and then add it section by section. Let me show you how to add a section here. So you click on Add Section, and then under the section type, these are all the sections available for you to select, okay? So let's see. Let's do a warning section here, and then you provide the effect date, which is 12, and then you can enter the text here or in the title or the content. Then once you're done, hit save. Now you have one section added. So to upload the content label, this is how you do it. Again, click on the S section, and then in the section type, you want to select the package label principal display panel, and then effect days. Again, it's going to be today. And then first, you have to choose the file that you want to upload. Okay. So I have one, open, and then upload. Now that your file is uploaded, next you're going to have to reference to the section. Okay. To do that, you will put the cursor right in here, and then select this little icon here, insert an image, and then select the file, and then give it a name, whatever name that you want it to call, and it'll hit OK. There you go. That's how you reference the cotton label. And then after that, make sure you hit the Save section, okay? There you go. Now you have two sections. You can view the cotton label by clicking this arrow. So as I had mentioned before, you can continue to fill out the content of labeling section by section until you're done. And then when you're done, just hit return. So now back to the main menu, you have the option to save as a draft or save and validate, which is highlight. I highly recommend it because when you use this option here, what it does is it will go and check to see if you have any error. But remember one thing, okay? When you choose this option, say and validate, it doesn't mean that you have submit the SBL to FDA, okay? It means that the submission is still on your local repository, okay? So when you're ready, if you come back without any errors, then you can go ahead and select the submit SBL. If you come back with an error, then you will click on the error and see what it is and fix it, okay? For this demonstration, I will not select any of these because I know I will get an error. That said, this concludes the live demonstration portion for this listing SBL. In summary, drug listings is important in many aspects. Listing allow FDA to maintain the inventory of all drugs commercially distributed in the U.S., and this information is used by public and other institutes. It is important to have a standard operation procedure or system in place to verify the accuracy of listing at least twice a year. One of our drug priority as a group is to have a complete and accurate data, and we need your help to obtain that information. Next, I would like to go over some do and don't related to the drug listing. Registrant must list all the drugs they manufacture. Pre-check listing at minimum every June and December for accuracy. Private label distributors, or PLDs, may list their own drugs, but make sure to use your own label code when listing your products. Include the complete supply chain under establishments. Also, inactive ingredients are now a required in the drug listing. Please do not submit drug listing for non-drug with CDER. Also, don't make assumptions. Make sure you have a complete, accurate information on the drug before submitting your drug listing. Don't omit data to pass automate validations. Don't include multiple email address when you request for system. It will only delay your request. In brief, the goal of this presentation is to help registrants submit accurate, compliant product listings. Accurate listings facilitate compliant and efficient engagement with FDA. Here are some of the helpful resources: electronic drug registration and listing instructions, strength conversion and drug listing, OTC active ingredients, electronic code of federal regulations, and our email address if you need any assistance. Last but not least, challenge questions. Challenge question number 1. A product listing can be listed with or without label code. True or false? Please take a moment to consider which answer is correct. If your answer is false, you are correct. You must have a label code for your product listing. Challenge question number 2. You must provide an active established information in product listing. True or false? Please take a moment to consider which answer is correct. If your answer is true, you are correct. The manufacturer must be active in order for you to use in your listing SBL. Challenge question number 3. There is no limit to how many products you can submit within the same SBL file. True or false? Please take a moment to consider which answer is correct. The correct answer is true. There's no limit to how many products you can submit within the same SBL file, as long as you're using the same label code. This concludes my portion of presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Yogesh Pariyoti and I'm a Consumer Safety Officer in the Drug Registration and Listing Branch within OUDLC at FDA. Today I want to discuss about listing updates and blanket no change certification. In this presentation, we will also go over some live demonstration. After participating in this session, attendees should be able to describe drug listing update and listing certification requirements. You should be able to describe what information must be submitted. You should be able to explain who needs to update and certify their drug listing information with the FDA. So let's begin with drug listing updates requirements. Under 21 CFR 207.57B1, each registrant must review and update their drug listing information no later than June and December of each year for any drug that was manufactured, repacked, relabeled, or salvaged that has not been previously listed. You should submit the date you discontinued your product by providing the expiration date of the lost lot that was manufactured, repacked, relabeled, or salvaged. You should submit the date an establishment resumed the manufacturing, repacking, or relabeling a drug that was previously discontinued. You should submit any material changes to any information that was previously submitted. 21 CFR 207.57C, registrants are encouraged to update listing information at the time of any change affecting information previously submitted. By doing so, you are providing FDA with most up-to-date information about your products that are in U.S. commercial distribution. Now we have a live demonstration. In this live demonstration, we will go over listing updates. For this, we will use CDER Direct. Once you are logged into your CDER Direct account, you want to click on Drug Listing and Certification. This should give you all of your listing submissions that you have sent to the FDA so far. From this list, you want to identify the product that you would like to update. For the demonstration purposes today, we are going to work on this product. And to do so, I'm going to click on the most recent submission accepted version of this file. Once you click on it, it opens up a new window. And from this new window, you want to click Create a New Version. Once you do this, it opens up a new SPL that has all the information about your product. It tells you document type. It tells you the labeler name. It gives you the information about the establishment. So in that case, if you would like to add another establishment, you can just simply click on it and add another establishment. If you would like to update your product, you just want to simply click on this radio button. Once you click on this radio button, it has all the information about your product. The NDC number, the name of the product, the route of administration. The most common question we get is how to deactivate or how to delist our product. If you would like to delist your product, all you have to do is change the marketing status from active to complete. And you can enter the date that you would like to discontinue your product. And once you have done that, you can easily just click on Save Product. And if you are done updating your information about your product, then you can just click on Submit SPL. Once you submit SPL, it will go to awaiting acceptance. Since we are using a pre-prod environment, this will take a few minutes before submission gets accepted. It's time for our first challenge question. How often must a registrant review and update their drug listing information? Is it A, once a year? Is it B, every month? Is it as soon as possible? Or is it D, June and December each year? I'll give you about a few seconds to think about it. If you guessed June and December each year, you are correct. So let's talk about listing certification requirements. Under 21 CFR 207.57B2, drugs not initially listed or updated during the calendar year must be updated or certified that the data has not changed since the last update. To do so,
Gonna say And then effect days, again, it's going to be today. And then first, you have to choose the file that you want to upload, okay? So I have one, open, and then upload. Now that your file is uploaded, next, you're going to have to reference to the section, okay? To do that, you will put the cursor right in here and then select this little icon there, insert an image, and then select the file and then give it a name, whatever name that you want it to call, and it'll hit OK. And there you go. That's how you reference the cotton label. And then after that, make sure you hit the save.
So I'm just going to click on that. It's only available
activation process and explain how to resolve an inactivated listing. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about strength conversion in the drug listings. So the electronic format that is used requires standardization and compatibility with the SPL format. And this is it with regards to the dosage form, the route of administration, the unit of measure, the active ingredient, the labeling, and the strength, which is what we're going to talk about. So with regards to standardization and compatibility, FDA has adopted the USP standards for expressing strength. The strength in the SPL cannot be expressed as a percentage. So when converting the strength on the labeling to the SPL, please make sure that the strength aligns with the labeling provided. It must be in a fraction ratio format.
complete. And you can enter the date that you would like to discontinue your product. And once you have done that, you can easily just click on Save Product. And if you are done updating your information about your product, then you can just click on Submit SPL. Once you submit SPL, it will go to awaiting acceptance. Since we are using a pre-prod environment, this will take a few minutes before submission gets accepted. It's time for our first challenge question. How often must a registrant review and update their drug listing information? Is it A, once a year? Is it B, every month? Is it as soon as possible? Or is it D, June and December each year? I'll give you about a few seconds to think about it. If you guessed June and December each year, you are correct. So let's talk about listing certification requirements. Under 21 CFR 207.57 B2, drugs not initially listed or updated during the calendar year must be updated or certified that the data has not changed since the last update. To do so, you could submit a blanket no change SPL. Please note, this blanket no change SPL is only available from October 1st through December 31st during the annual period of registration renewal and drug listing certification window. Inside the annual certification window, an update or revision of the drug listing SPL submission for each NDC is required for certification. Drug listing not certified will be considered expired in January and may be inactivated and removed from databases. An inactivated listing does not cover delisting requirements. Now we have a live demonstration for blanket no change certification. In this live demonstration, I will go over and explain how to submit a blanket no change certification to the FDA. For this, we will use CDER Direct. So once you are logged into your CDER Direct account, you want to click on Drug Listing and Certification. From this window, you want to click on Create New File and select Create a New Drug Listing and Certification using a blank form. From the SPL document type, select Blanket No Changes Certification and hit Continue. From this screen, please note this. It says, please note that the Blanket No Changes Certification of product listing is intended to certify drug listing files only. The blanket no change certification does not affect establishment registration files. Now, so for you to do your blanket no change certification, you want to make sure that you have the correct information for your DUNS, your organization name, phone number, name, email, or if it's the same information as your CDER Direct account, you can just click on this, or you can manually add this information. For this live demonstration today, my information is same as the CDER Direct account, so I'm just going to click on that. Once I click on it, you see all of my information auto-populates here. I can tell this phone number is incorrect, so I'm just going to put a little dashes here. Now, the next thing that you need to do is you need to add your labeler. My labeler is this, so I'm going to add it. Once I add my labeler, it tells me the name of my firm, the contact details, and also it tells me all the physical address here as well. Now, most of the time, what folks do when they are sending this SPL to us, they just click on Show Products. When they click on Show Products, they notice that, oh, my products are not here. So what they forgot to do is they forgot to click on this button right here. And the reason for that is you need to select an establishment before you can see your products. So once you click on it and you click on Show Products, it gives you all of your products here. In my case here, I have 5 products here. 4 of them needs to be certified. 1 of them is inactivated. Inactivated meaning this listing data for this product has been inactivated by the FDA and cannot be certified. So if you need to list your inactivated product, you need to manually do that. You cannot do this via blanket no changes certification. And if you look at uncertified, it tells you this product listing has not been certified for the next calendar year and is available for certification. So all you have to do is select all of it, save. Once you save it, you will see all your products here that are included in the submission. Once you are satisfied with this, you can hit Save and Validate. Now you can see this SPL has been submitted to the FDA, and there is a validation in progress. And that's it. Now you have sent your blanket no change certification to the FDA. Now we have a challenge question, and this is our challenge question number 2. When can a blanket no changes certification SPL be submitted? Is it A, once a year, B, October 1st through December 31st? Is it C, at any point in the year? Or is it D, June and December each year? If you guessed October 1st through December 31st, you are correct. We have another challenge question here. To delist your product, you should change marketing status from active to complete. Is it A, true, or is it B, false? Give you guys about a few seconds to think about it. Okay, if you guessed A, true, you are correct. For information about the topics covered today, here is the link to FDA's electronic drug registration listing instruction website. Summary. Update your drug listing no later than June and December each year. Blanket no changes certification window is only available annually from October 1st through December 31st. Delist your product if it's no longer in U.S. commercial distribution, and inactivated listing data is not in compliance even if the drug is discontinued. Questions will be answered in the live Q&A segment. Thank you.
I'd like to thank my colleague for their presentation. My name is Vikas Arora, and I'm back again to talk about some drug listing highlights. Here are the learning objectives for this presentation. First, it's to describe how to properly convert strengths and drug listings from labeling. 2 is to describe how to accurately list combination products. And 3 is to review the data and activation process and explain how to resolve an inactivated listing. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about strength conversion in the drug listings. So the electronic format that is used requires standardization and compatibility with the SPL format. And this is it with regards to the dosage form, the route of administration, the unit of measure, the active ingredient, the labeling, and the strength, which is what we're going to talk about. So with regards to standardization and compatibility, FDA has adopted the USP standards for expressing strength. The strength in the SPL cannot be expressed as a percentage. So when converting the strength on the labeling to the SPL, please make sure that the strength aligns with the labeling provided. It must be in a fraction ratio format. It must contain a numerator and a denominator. And we do have automatic validations in place to verify this format, but sometimes these automatic validations don't catch all of the issues when converting the strength from the labeling. So with regards to the strength conversion, the SPL must contain format of the strength must contain a numerator and a denominator. The numerator is generally the weight or volume of the active ingredient, and the examples of the units are the milligrams and milliliters. The denominator is generally the weight or volume of the drug base or time. And the examples of the denominator units include milligrams, milliliters, hour, and per tablet. Here are some examples of what the SPL numerator and denominator units should be for different dosage forms. Pay close attention to the oral powder for reconstitution. The ones with the known volume have volume in the SPL denominator unit, and the ones with the variable volume have each as a denominator unit for each container. So what are some issues that can arise if the strength is not properly converted into the SPL? Incorrect strength conversion can cause automated validation errors if not in the correct formatting. If the strength conversion in the SPL doesn't match the labeling or the content of label provided, this can result in a compliance case. And corrections that are submitted will require CDER's manual review and approval prior to a manual override. This manual review process, as well as the manual override, can cause a delay in the posting of the drug listing. Please reference the following link below with regards to any assistance required when converting your strength into the SPL format. Now we will move on to discussing how to properly identify combination products in drug listings. So what are combination products? Combination products are composed of any combination of a drug and a device, a biological product and a device, a drug and a biological product, or a drug device and a biological product. From a CDER perspective, for drug listing purposes, there are two or more regulated components consisting of a drug with a biologic, or a drug and a device, or a drug, device, and a biologic. As you can see those combinations below. So what are different types of combination products that we can see? There's three different types. There's the single entity products, where there are two or more regulated components that are physically, chemically, or otherwise combined or mixed and produced as a single entity. There are co-packaged products, where there are two or more separate products that are co-packaged together into a single package or distributed as a unit. And then there's cross-labeled products, where there are two or more products that are distributed separately, but that are intended for combined use. So how do you know if your product is a combination product? Well, for products that are recently approved as NDAs and ANDAs, the 356H form can be referenced as sponsors must clearly identify a combination product. If it is unclear for older approved products or products not subject to FDA approval, please contact the Office of Combination Products at combination@fda.gov. So how do we properly identify a combination product in a drug listing? So when listing a combination product, we have to identify the product as a combination product in the listing and provide information on all constituent parts. So within the packaging data section, there is a section that says combination product type. You're going to select the drop-down and select the correct combination product type. So what are the listing requirements for the different combination product types? If you have a single entity combination product, it must be listed with the lead center. If you have a co-packaged combination product, such as a drug device product with a CDER lead, you would select kit for the dosage form and then identify each component. If you have a cross-labeled product, it must be listed with the lead center if the constituent parts are approved under a single application, and under multiple centers if they are separately approved under different application types. Here is a chart of the different combination product types with common examples that can be referenced when listing your combination product. Here are some helpful links that can be utilized when listing your combination product, including the chart referenced in the previous page. And now we will move on to our last topic, the data inactivation process. So the data inactivation FR notice was first published on August 14, 2019 and went into effect shortly thereafter in September 2019. It announced FDA's intent to inactivate outdated drug listings. There are two annual inactivation periods for different violations. There is the January inactivation and the July inactivation. And we will go into the reasons for these inactivations in later slides. So with regards to the data inactivation process, a notification is sent out to the labeler point of contact with the estimated date of inactivation if no updates are made. So please verify that the labeler code SBL has the most updated contact information. As mentioned in the presentation on the labeler code request, any updates to the contact information are required to be made within 30 days, and it's very important to keep this information up to date to receive this notification. So let's go into the reasons for the data inactivation. As previously mentioned, if a drug listing was updated during the current calendar year due to any changes that were made and an updated version of the SPL was submitted, that drug listing is now certified. But if there's no changes that were made or required during the current calendar year, under 21 CFR 207.57B2, registrants may satisfy the listing update requirement with respect to unchanged listing information by making a single no change certification during the annual certification period, which runs from October 1st to December 31st each year. Because of this requirement, drug listings that have not been updated during the current calendar year, nor have had a blanket no change certification submitted for them during the annual certification period, become uncertified in January. If you receive an inactivation notification email, a new version of the drug listing SPL must be submitted with any pertinent updates in order to reactivate or correct the data depending on the situation. So let's move on to the July inactivation. The July inactivation occurs for those listings that remain active and certified after the June listing update but contain at least one establishment not duly registered with FDA. So 21 CFR 207.57B states that registrants must review and update their drug listing information each June and December. So if updates are not made by the June requirement to those drug listings which are still linked to an unregistered establishment, they are inactivated in the July inactivation. So what are the consequences if your drug listing becomes inactivated? That drug listing will be removed from FDA databases, such as the NDC directory. That listing will be flagged in DailyMed as inactivated. And those listing and activation dates are transmitted through the NSDE files, and this can cause possible CMS reimbursement issues. So how do we resolve inactivation once it has occurred? Once inactivation has occurred, a new version of the SPL is required to be submitted to either certify the drug listing or update the listing with the correct establishment information. Once this listing has been updated, it can take 24 to 48 hours for a successful submission to be reactivated and take an additional time for downstream publications to be updated, such as the NDC directory and DailyMed. Again, resolving this inactivation that we're speaking about here is associated with the January and July inactivation, not due to inactivation due to a compliance case, in which case an SPL will have to manually be reviewed. Here are some helpful links below that can be referenced regarding data inactivation. So in summary, be vigilant when converting strengths from labels into standardized strength formats in the SPL. With regards to combination product listings, please note it's important to accurately describe the type of combination product in your listing as well as list your product with the correct center. And lastly, be aware of the data inactivation timelines that occur in January and July and certify or update your listings accordingly. And now let's go into some challenge questions. Challenge question number 1, true or false? The strength of an oral drug product that is a powder intended for reconstitution with variable volume should be described in the SPL as weight in the SPL numerator and each in the SPL denominator in the drug listing. The answer is true. Because this is a oral drug product for reconstitution with variable volume, the denominator should be each for each container. Challenge question number 2, true or false? Co-packaged drug device products with the CDER lead must select kit as a dosage form when listing the product. And this is true. For a co-packaged product with the CDER lead, you must select kit as a dosage form and then select the component parts and identify them. And lastly, challenge question number 3. If a manufacturer referenced in a drug listing has been deregistered in February of a calendar year due to no longer manufacturing drug product for commercial distribution, when must the drug listing be updated? A, February, B, June, C, December, or D, never? And the answer is June. If you have a change that occurs in February of the calendar year, you must provide that update by June of that year. Although we encourage an update to a drug listing to be made as soon as possible and to not wait until the June requirement. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions in the Q&A panel.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for staying with us. My name is Tasneem Hussain, and this presentation is about complying with drug listing requirements. So by the end of this presentation, hopefully you'll be able to describe drug listing requirements under 21 CFR 207, identify some common listing issues, explain the compliance program and listing deficiency letter highlights, and describe effects of non-compliance. So we will start with where drug listing requirements are found. They are found under Section 510 of the FD&C Act and codified under 21 CFR Part 207, Subpart D. We will briefly go over what these sections contain. 207.4.1 includes who must list and what drugs must be listed. So each registrant must list each drug that it manufactures, repacks, relabels, or salvages for commercial distribution. Remember that registrants are required to follow the requirements under 207.4.9, 207.5.3, 207.5.4, depending on the activity that they engage in. Remember, private label distributor listings must be listed as well as contract manufacturer listings. The contract manufacturer is ultimately responsible for making sure 2 drug listings are submitted for each product that they are listing. So drug listing requirements. 20745. When must the listing information be submitted? It's no later than 3 calendar days after the initial registration of the establishment. 20749 includes the manufacturer's requirements. 20753 includes repackager and relabeler requirements. And remember here, for repackager and relabelers, it's very important to make sure that the repackager and relabeler is using the correct NDCs in the appropriate section of the listing submission. So in the house supplied section and in the label image, the repackager must have the repackager's NDC, not the NDC of the source. 20754 includes drug salvager requirements. So when must listing information be updated? This has been discussed in other presentations, but it's important, so please review 20757. Firms must at least send in updates in June and December each year. We request that updates are submitted as soon as possible, however. Firms can use the blanket no change certification SBL, which is available October to December each year, to certify a whole bunch or all of their listings in one form if no changes have occurred to the listing data. So where is the listing data found? It's in the National Drug Code Directory, or the NDC directory. The listing data that's submitted to FDA by the labelers is included in the National Drug Code Directory. It includes active products, finished and unfinished products also. The listing data is removed from the NDC directory if an end marketing date has reached, if there's a compliance case that is not resolved, if the listing information has not been updated or certified, and the NDC directory is updated daily, Monday through Friday. Here are some of the common listing issues we encounter. All of these are required elements in a listing submission, and errors with any of these can lead to compliance actions. So some of the issues we see are incorrect or missing DEA schedule, incorrect NDC, incorrect marketing category or document type, incorrect marketing authorization, meaning they can have an incorrect application number or monograph ID. There may be labeling issues such as incomplete labeling or outdated labeling. There may be strength or strength conversion issues. Strength is a very common error, and we have a strength conversion document in our compliance page, which can assist firms in understanding how to convert from a percent to a weight over volume or weight over weight. And this explains how different dosage forms should be listed. And we have a link for that coming up later. So now we can discuss about our compliance program. Our program started in 2015 with the mission to protect and promote public health by striving to achieve accuracy and integrity of the establishment registration and listing data. We have 4 phases of compliance actions that we follow. So first is the review of data. We review the data to find data inaccuracies. Then we send the firm a deficiency letter where we highlight the deficiency and give the firm 30 days to correct it. If they don't correct it, then we go through the next phase, which is data removal. And the data will be removed from the NDC directory. And then if the issue is still not resolved, then we take further actions such as possible untitled letters, warning letters, and data inactivation. These are some important points to highlight about the deficiency letters. The deficiency we identify is clearly stated in the first paragraph and in the summary table. Next, it states that the firm has 30 days to make the corrections. Next point to note is non-delivery of the letter does not stop the process, meaning that if the firm does not update the contact information, this will not relieve the firm from its listing obligations. There's a requirement to update, and this is found under 207.33C. Further actions may be taken, as you know, data removal, untitled letter, warning letter, and data inactivation. And also note that at the last part of this deficiency letter, there are specific instructions on how to send an updated SPL file. Complying with listing requirements can be easy if you read and follow the requirements under 21 CFR 207, if you read the deficiency letter and follow the instructions, if you need to revise the file with the corrections and you encounter validation errors. At that time, please send an email to our office and send us the core ID or the submission ID for review and approval. And once we check for accuracy, we will request a manual override from the SPL coordinator when a compliance case has been open. If there is no compliance case and you are updating some listings and you encounter some validation errors that need a manual override, in that situation, at that point, you can request an override from the SPL coordinator. These are some reasons why having an accurate listing data is important and why you must comply with listing requirements. Accurate listing data is needed for post-marketing surveillance. It helps with recalls and shortages when they occur to identify products that are listed and available in the market. It helps with adverse event reporting, supply chain security, helps to identify unapproved products in the market. It's used by import-export offices. It's used by prescribers. And this listing data is available for the public to access via the NDC directory and several other public databases. And here are some effects of non-compliance. Public safety concerns, medication errors, data removal from the NDC directory, publication of warning letters, data inactivation. There may be CMS reimbursement issues, and there may be importation issues. So we have come to our first challenge question. This is a true or false question. So incomplete or outdated labeling is a type of listing issue. Is this true or false? We'll give you a few moments to think. So the answer to challenge question 1 is true. Labeling is required to be submitted as part of the drug listing requirements. Thus, it must be complete and current. Challenge question 2. Select the true statement about the NDC directory. A. FDA publishes the drug listing information in the NDC directory. B. The NDC directory is updated once a week. C. The NDC directory contains inactivated data. D. All of these are true statements. And we'll give you a few moments to think of this one. The answer is A. Only A is the correct choice. FDA publishes the listing data in the NDC directory. Here is our final challenge question. How can you ensure compliance with listing requirements? A. Follow 21 CFR 207. B. Read and follow the deficiency letter and respond within 30 days. C. First send Drug Registration and Listing Branch the submission ID or the core ID of the failed submission for review and approval of the manual override. D. All of the above. We'll give you a few moments to think of the answer. Answer is D. All of the above. So in summary, to maintain compliance with listing requirements, you must follow the requirements under 207. You must follow the instructions in the deficiency letter. Update outdated contact information. Remember that non-compliance can have negative consequences, and listing data is so important for FDA's mission. As a closing thought, avoid issues by submitting the drug listing correctly the first time. So this is the resources page with the links to 21 CFR 207, the NDC directory, and our drug registration and listing compliance program. And this is the page that includes the strength conversion document. Thank you for joining us once again. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
All right. And so it is now my pleasure to introduce our next set of presenters who will be speaking specifically on the subject of the National Drug Code. In this session, we will hear from David Mazik, a Consumer Safety Officer, Dr. Leila Rajul Esfandiari, Branch Chief, and Lieutenant Commander Sujin Park, Regulatory Officer, all from the Drug Registration and Listing Branch of the Division of Labeling Registration and Unapproved Drugs in the Office of Unapproved Drugs and Labeling Compliance, again within FDA's FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. And now, please join me in welcoming David Mazik.
Thank you, folks, and welcome back. Thank you for participating in our conference this year. This afternoon, I will be going over the NDC Reservation tool and document type. And once again, my name is David Mazik. So today we have a handful of objectives that we want to accomplish. First and foremost, we're going to talk briefly about the reservation file and the required elements for that file, for that document type. And secondly, for the time frame for submitting the file and what's required for that time frame. And then finally, the importance of use of that registration file and how it helps our agency as well as the stakeholder. So here's some of the benefits of using the NDC reservation file. Specifically for pre-launch activities, when you're pre-printing labeling for the product prior to that product being in commercial distribution. Once the NDC is reserved, it can be held for up to 2 years once it's been accepted. Thirdly, it helps prevent some of the duplication errors that we've been finding and formatting errors that we've been finding. One of the common errors that has been corrected over the years would be the NDC configuration, but the NDC reservation will help mitigate some of those issues when it comes to submitting an NDC for a specific labeler code. And then finally, for your CMOs, for your contract manufacturers, for those contract manufacturers responsible for submitting on behalf of a private label distributor or using that NDC reservation to submit on behalf of the PLD. This is a tool that will help them facilitate that action. So who should reserve an NDC? As I mentioned, when you're participating in pre-launch activities and the NDC is going to be on the labeling, this is a good tool to use to make sure that you're using the correct format for that NDC for the particular product. Also for contract manufacturers who are responsible for submitting the drug listing for their private label distributors. And then finally, in an instance wherein the final characteristics of that product are unknown, but yet you want to assign an NDC, and this is earlier on in the product, in the life cycle of the drug product and drug submission. So, and when we talk about physical characteristics, obviously the color, shape, and imprint information. When that stuff is unknown, this is a good opportunity for someone or for a stakeholder to use the NDC reservation tool to lock down an NDC. So now, when should the NDC reservation be used? Once again, for pre-market labeling issues or labeling instances wherein the NDC appears on the labeling, and then obviously prior to final labeling approval and printing. Oftentimes companies in the past have had issues again with formatting of the NDC and or configuration issues with the specific NDC. And then finally, the reservation is not required for an actual listing. So this file is not a prerequisite for a complete listing. If you're ready to market a drug, you have the correct NDC, it's been validated, go ahead and submit that actual listing. The reservation is not a required file or a precursor for an actual complete listing. And then finally, In an instance wherein a product is not going to be launched for more than 2 years, then you don't want to use an NDC reservation. The reservation is held for up to 2 years. So you want to avoid using the NDC reservation in an instance wherein that product is not going to be marketed for 3 years. Here's some key elements or nuances of the NDC reservation. The labeler code that is used in the NDC reservation has to be a valid labeler code, has to be a labeler code that is recognized by our system. And so the firm needs to go in and electronically claim that labeler code and or apply for a labeler code that has been submitted electronically. And finally, here are some of the data elements required for the NDC reservation. The labeler name, the labeler DUNS, the NDC prod code, and that NDC prod code encompasses the labeler code and the product number, the non-proprietary name, dosage form, marketing status, and the reserved until date. And then finally, one active ingredient. These are the required elements for an NDC reservation. And as we mentioned, the NDC under the same labeler code can be reserved, or NDCs under the same labeler code, that reclaimed labeler code that's already in the electronic system. All of the drug products can be submitted under one file for a specific labeler code. And then once that NDC is proposed or accepted, then it's reserved. The reservation occurs at the product level. NDC is reserved at the product level. As we mentioned in the previous slide, that one of the main components is the combination of the NDC prod code, which is the labeler code and product number. No packaging information is required. And then finally, there are no other additional information required for an NDC reservation beyond the prod code. Here's some further key points on the NDC reservation. The marketing status for all reserved NDCs is deemed new or reserved. To convert an NDC reservation SBL to a listing SBL, that status has to be changed from reserved and or new to active. And then a reserved NDC that is no longer needed can be canceled. You can cancel that NDC if the reservation is no longer needed. To cancel an NDC reservation, you would merely change that marketing status from reserved to cancel. There's some more key nuances to the NDC reservation document type. The cancellation date corresponds to the submittal date for the NDC reservation. The NDC reservation cannot be used for another product. That reserved NDC cannot be used for another product. Obviously, once you've reserved it, it cannot be used for another reservation either. So it's unique to that particular product that you've reserved up to 2 years. And then finally, once the reservation has been canceled, then the NDC can be placed back into your inventory of NDCs that can be used for other products. But keep in mind that the reservation has to be canceled. And this is slightly different from when a product has been discontinued. And my colleagues will go over the nuances of discontinuing a fully listed drug product. But in this instance, we're talking about the reservation file. Now, in this presentation, I will not go through a demo of the NDC reservation. I just wanted to show you the screen where the actual reservation resides and some of the nuances on that screen from the CDER Direct page. So now let's jump into our challenge question. Challenge question number 1. Which of the following data elements can be excluded from the NDC reservation file? And the answer to question number 1 is C. The package code information is excluded from the reservation file. The other 3 elements, the active ingredient, labeler code, DUNS, and name, are required fields. Question number 2. Is the NDC reservation required to facilitate the listing submission? And that means a complete listing submission. And obviously that is false. The NDC reservation is not required to complete or facilitate a complete listing submission. So let's go forward to question number 3. True or false? Is the reservation data published on the NDC directory? And that is false. Keep in mind, the reservation is not a complete listing, and only completed and validated products that are currently in commercial distribution will appear on the NDC directory. So in summary, the NDC reservation file or document type should only be selected to reserve an NDC for up to 2 years. And so if you have a product that you know won't be hitting the marketplace for 3 years, then we suggest that you not use the NDC reservation. And then finally, the reservation is not a complete drug listing, so it can't be substituted. It can't be used as a substitute in lieu of a complete submission. So reservation is just a tool that covers the pre-launch activities for a product that is not currently in the marketplace. And as always, feel free to reach out to me or anyone on our staff to address any of the questions or concerns you have with this document type and with this file. We'll be happy to address any issues that you have concerning the reservation and look forward to answering any questions that you have. Thank you.
In the second presentation of this afternoon's National Drug Code session, I'm going to talk about the future format of the NDC. You will learn after this presentation to define the National Drug Code, provide an overview of the proposed rule revising the NDC format, and describe the proposed implementation timeline. We start the presentation with a poll question. You can type your answer in the chat box to answer this question. Which statement is true about the NDC? A. NDC is required to appear on all human prescription drug carton labels. B. NDC is 11 digits and is used in dispensing and reimbursement transactions. C. NDC is 10 digits and has various formats. Or D. Both A and B. See, the answers are coming in, and the correct one would be C. NDC is 10 digits and has different formats. So as a reminder, we have talked about this before in prior presentations, and we'll talk more about NDC in the next presentation. But as we know, it's a unique identifier for drugs in U.S. commercial distribution, and for most drugs, it's included on a drug label and labeling. It must be assigned to all drugs that are in U.S. commercial distribution and can be part of the UPC. This, again, is a reminder for many of us that NDC is 10 digits. It has 3 segments, and it has 3 different formats that are assigned by FDA. So there is actually an 11-digit NDC format, which was included in the poll question. An FDA-assigned 10-digit NDC is converted to the HIPAA standardized 11-digit NDC format by adding a leading 0 to the applicable short segment to make a 542 format. As you can see on this slide, it shows on the left side the 3 different NDC format that are switched to the HIPAA 11-digit format on the right. So we have a finite amount of 5-digit labeler codes, and we will eventually run out. Under current regulations, once we run out of 5-digit labeler codes, we must assign 6-digit labeler codes. That will create an 11-digit FDA-assigned NDC and will introduce 2 new formats to the current formats of the NDC, the 632 and the 641. That obviously is a concern because without a change, we will have 5 different NDC formats in FDA, and an FDA-assigned 11-digit NDC may be confusing with a HIPAA-converted 11-digit NDC. And not only it's costly, but all these conversions, but also it may cause medication errors, which is a grave concern. And as you can see on this example provided, especially in systems that remove hyphens in NDC, there is a concern about a duplicate NDC between the 11-digit converted HIPAA format and the new FDA-assigned 11-digit NDCs. So FDA published a proposed rule in July of 2022, which was intended to minimize the impact of moving to 6-digit labeler codes and also to eliminate the timing uncertainty and multiple NDC lengths and formats that were as a result of moving to 6-digit labeler codes. So proposed rule included provisions to update the length and format of the NDC to a 12-digit format, 642, and it actually proposed also some barcode labeling requirements. So to list some of the potential benefits, the proposed rule, once finalized, facilitates the adoption of a single NDC format by all stakeholders, which would in turn eliminate the need to convert NDCs from an FDA format to a different format, and eliminates the need for stakeholders to maintain multiple versions of an NDC. It also eliminates the need to convert NDCs and minimizes confusion and potential medication errors that could result from format conversions. The proposed rule also would provide stakeholders with a specific date by which FDA would begin issuing NDCs in a new format, which would provide more certainty to everyone regarding when they would need to have systems ready to accept the NDCs in a format other than the 3 current 10-digit FDA-assigned formats. The proposed rule, if finalized, will have a delayed effective date. It was proposed that the effective date will be 5 years after the publication of the final rule, and after that we enter a 3-year transition period. So after a 5-year delayed effective date, it is proposed that there is a 3-year transition period, and it is designed to minimize relabeling costs and decreasing drug shortage risks due to timing of product release, and also limiting the time frame that may cause confusion with coexisting labeling with 2 different lengths of NDC. So on the effective date, FDA will convert all NDCs to 12 digits and start assigning 6-digit labeler codes, which leads to assignment of new 12-digit format NDCs. Everyone should have their systems capable of handling the new 12-digit NDC in the 642 format, and firms should start labeling drugs that were assigned 10-digit NDCs with the new 12-digit 642 format, and that is on or after the effective date, not before then. And then the drug listing submissions would be required to also use the new 12-digit NDC format in the new submissions, and any updates needs to also include the 12-digit NDC in the SPL and in the labeling after the effective date. Transition period starts right after the effective date, and it's proposed currently to be 3 years. During this time, FDA will publish and maintain both 10 and 12-digit NDCs. FDA does not intend to object if drugs that were assigned a 10-digit NDC prior to the effective date continue to be labeled and distributed with the 10-digit NDC on the label, but encourages manufacturers and distributors to include 12-digit NDCs on their drug labeling as soon as possible after the effective date, but not later than when the firm runs out of its existing labeling inventory for the drug and orders or begins printing new labeling. After the transition period ends, all firms would be required to use a 12-digit NDC in the listing files. So being prepared and planning this accordingly, if the rule is finalized as proposed, will reduce the impact and cost to all stakeholders. And there are three fronts that you have to be prepared for. One is the operating systems that need to be able to accommodate the new 12-digit NDC in a 642 format on the effective date. And then labeling, so planning, labeling update and annual report according to the rule's effective date will help you maintain an up-to-date labeling and meet the requirements and complying with the requirements, and also reduce cost. And also for drug listing, to confirm the 12-digit NDC format after the effective date and providing updated labeling for your drug listing file when those updates are required in your drug listing. To wrap up the presentation, you must answer this challenge question. I will let you read it and provide your answers in the chat box. Which statement is true, A, B, C, or D? And the correct answer, as some of you have responded correctly, is D. And on this slide, I have provided a link to the 2022 Federal Register notice for your information. So in summary, with or without a final rule, regardless of how it's finalized, the NDC format will change in the future. So we advise you to stay tuned and informed, and reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you for your attention. Now I turn it to my colleague, Lieutenant Commander Sujin Park, for an excellent presentation on NDC assignment to drugs.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sujin Park, and I am your last presenter for this session. Today, I will be talking about the NDC assignment to drugs. In this presentation, I will talk about the assignment of NDCs to drugs. We will learn a bit about the history of NDC and provide NDC change requirements and restrictions. As it's been discussed in prior presentations by David and Layla, NDC is an identifier unique to each drug that is assigned to drugs in U.S. commercial distribution. It's in our medicine cabinets at home or behind the counter at your local pharmacy. The assignment of NDC to drugs can impact public health in a number of ways, and it is one of the most important aspects of drug listing. Before I move into how NDCs are assigned, a quick recap of what NDC is. The NDC is currently 10 digits and consists of 3 segments, as you all know: labeler code, product code, and package code. I'd like to emphasize that once an NDC is assigned to a drug, it cannot be reused, even after the listed drug is discontinued. However, if a discontinued drug resumes marketing without any changes made to the previously listed drug, the previously assigned NDC should be used. When a registrant or its authorized agent first submits a drug listing, they can propose an NDC for that drug. If that NDC has not already been used, FDA will assign the proposed NDC to that drug. FDA's assignment of an NDC is based on an automatic validation and does not reflect whether it is appropriate for the drug being listed. Therefore, a drug listing file should not be submitted for products such as dietary supplement, medical food, or medical devices, and they may be deemed misbranded if such product use an NDC. For most of us working in healthcare setting, pharmaceutical supply chain, or insurance companies, we make use of NDCs every day, but very few know the history of their development. In 1969, the NDC was created to provide an identification system to permit automated processing of drug data by government agencies, industries, hospitals, and insurance companies. It was a voluntary identifier until 1972 under the Drug Listing Act, which required a registered drug establishment to provide FDA with a current list of all drugs it manufactures for commercial distribution in the US. Then enacted in 1996, implemented in 2000 under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, NDC for the first time was reported in an 11-digit format instead of 10. U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, some other government agencies and healthcare systems reformat NDCs to 11-digit under HIPAA by adding a leading zero to short segments to create a 542 format. Since June 2009, establishment registration and drug listing data are submitted electronically to FDA in structured product labeling, or SPL format. Drugs are then identified and listed with FDA using the NDCs. In 2016, FDA published a final rule to modify, clarify various regulations for establishment registration and drug listing information. The final rule included changes to NDC assignment and format, the standard for which when NDCs are required, and clarification of misbranding provisions if NDCs are used improperly. So when do we require changes to the assigned NDC? The NDC must propose a new and unique NDC for a drug when there is a change to any of the information identified in 207.35 B or C. The new NDC must include a different product code when there is a change in drug's established name or proprietary name, if any, a change in active ingredient or strength, a change in dosage form, drug status, drug's intended use, or any changes to the drug's distinguishing characteristics. With respect to the package code, different package sizes and types for a drug cannot share the same package code under the same labeler code and product code. For example, if a drug is packaged in different container materials such as glass or plastic containers, different package codes should be used to distinguish the different container types. Under the old regulations, NDCs were allowed to be reused after a listed drug was discontinued for 5 years. That changed with the provision made to the codified and after the effective date of 2016 final rule. NDCs can no longer be reused after a product discontinuation. However, as I shared earlier, if a previously discontinued drug becomes commercially available or marketed, the same NDC should be assigned. It is important to remember that the assignment of an NDC does not denote approval of the drug, nor does it mean that the drug may be legally marketed. Any representation that creates the impression that a drug is approved or is legally marketable because it appears in our database of drugs, has been assigned or displayed an NDC is misleading and constitutes misbranding. FDA strongly encourages inclusion of the NDC in a human-readable format on the container label and carton labeling of the prescription and non-prescription drug for proper identification of the drug and to reduce the risk of medication error. For human prescription drugs, the house supply, storage, and handling section of the package insert must include NDCs. FDA recommends that NDCs for the unit package sizes are made available. Also for OTC drugs, FDA strongly encourages inclusion of the appropriate NDC on the container label and carton labeling. If a manufacturer, repacker, or PLD chooses to include the NDC should be displayed in the FDA-assigned 3-segmented human-readable format. For drugs that are subject to FDA review and approval under a NDA, BLA, ANDA, or other associated supplements, verification of NDC assignment is not typically part of the review and approval process. The NDCs that appear in approval labeling may not have been assigned by FDA because NDCs are only assigned once the drug listing file has been accepted after approval of the application or supplement. To remediate any issues, the registrant or its authorized agent can reserve an NDC before drug approval and label printing. If you need any assistance or have any questions related to NDCs, please reach out to the email address provided here. For the purposes of drug listing, co-packaged products are considered kits. And it is any CDER or CBER-led single package of 2 or more different products co-packaged together, where at least one of the co-packaged products is a drug or biological products. If a kit is subject to drug listing requirements under Part 207, then the proposed NDC for the kit should be different than the NDC proposed to any of the individual drugs or biological products included in the kit. This means that the NDC product code for the kit should be different from the NDC product code or codes for each drug or biological product co-packaged within the kit. In addition, any non-drug parts should be identified as part of the kit's drug listing, but an NDC for such non-drug should not be included. A multi-level package includes different levels of packaging for one drug. For example, a carton containing a blister pack of solid oral dosage form or a carton containing multiple vials of an injectable drug. Since the package code segment of the NDC identifies a unique package size and type, you should assign a different package code to each level of packaging. For example, if 10 identical vials of an injectable drug are placed in a carton for U.S. commercial distribution, and 5 of the cartons are then placed into a case for shipping purposes, FDA expects a different package code to be assigned to the vials and carton, and no NDC should be assigned to the shipping case. Okay, now we are moving into a couple of challenge questions to wrap up my presentation. Okay, challenge question number 1. Which of the following can be assigned an NDC? OTC drug, medical device, human prescription drug, dietary supplement, or A and C? The answer is E, A, and C. Number 2. NDC proposed to the co-packaged product should be different than NDC proposed for each drug part. The answer is A, that is true. In summary, NDC assignment is a separate process from the drug approval process. NDC assignment process starts with the registrant proposing an NDC for a drug at the time of drug listing submission, and FDA assigns the proposed NDC. Printing NDC in a human-readable format on drug container label is strongly encouraged. And regardless of an NDC inclusion on a drug label or not, all drugs that must be listed with FDA must be assigned an NDC. Concludes my presentation on the NDC assignment to drugs. Thank you all for attending, and we will take some questions during our last Q&A session. Thank you.
All right. Another thank you to all our presenters for the session. If you had questions for them, again, please stay tuned as they will be back for the Q&A a bit later. And now we will be taking another quick break. Welcome back. And to thank you to you, all our viewers who are continuing to stay tuned in today. I would now like to introduce our next set of presenters who will be speaking on recent updates. We will be welcoming back Dr. Leila Raju Esfandiari, Branch Chief of the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. We will also hear from Obina Ugwu Oju, Division Director of the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, Office of Quality Surveillance in FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. And we will also hear again from Dr. Yogesh Paruthi, Consumer Safety Officer within the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. And now I'll hand it back over to Dr. Leila Raju Esfandiari.
On the first update presentation of this afternoon, I'm going to discuss the OTC drug listing updates and validations. After this presentation, you should be able to describe listing updates for OTC drug marketing authorization, name the latest OTC drug marketing categories, and describe listing updates needed for fiscal year 2025 OMUFA determination. On March 27, 2020, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, was signed into law and added Section 505G to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which is intended to reform and modernize the framework for the regulation of OTC monograph drugs. OTC monograph drugs may be marketed without an approved drug application under Section 505 of the FD&C Act if they meet the requirement of Section 505G of the FD&C Act, including applicable conditions in an OTC monograph. A monograph is associated and identified with a number that refers to a therapeutic category. It establishes conditions such as active ingredients, uses or indications, doses, routes of administration, labeling, and testing, under which an OTC drug is given therapeutic categories such as sunscreen or antacid, is generally recognized as safe and effective for its intended use. A list of all current monograph IDs and the respective therapeutic categories is available online, and a link is provided at the end of this presentation. Some drug listing updates went into effect on October 1, 2023. That included 2 new marketing categories, OTC monograph drug and OTC monograph drug manufactured under contract. So the old OTC monograph final and not final marketing categories are no longer available as of October 1, 2023. And also the new monograph IDs replaced the old CFR citations for OTC drug listings. The new marketing categories and monograph IDs, once replaced the old ones in October 2023, were only required for new submissions for OTC drugs. As a result, the older submissions that were not updated still remain under the old information. As discussed this morning in the listing certification requirements under FDA regulations, each listed drug must be certified if no changes have occurred since its drug listing was last reviewed and updated. And that certification period is during the registration renewal period from October 1st to December 1st annually. This year in 2024, for the certification period, all OTC drug listing submissions must be updated to include the new marketing categories and the correct monograph IDs. If the old marketing categories or citations to the CFRs are provided in the old listing submission, the submission will not be available for certification, and any revision to those SPLs, if it does not get updated to include the new and appropriate marketing categories and monograph IDs, will fail validation. So as a second update on how some recent changes can affect your OTC drug listings, we talk about the OMUFA facility fees, the FRN for OTC monograph order request or OMOR fee rates for fiscal year 2025 was published in July 2024, and those rates are effective on October 1st, 2024 till September 30th of 2025. As explained in the January 2021 HHS FRN and FDA subsequent FRNs published on March 26, 2021, March 16, 2022, and March 27, 2023 of fiscal year 2021 to 2023 OMUFA FRNs, companies that first registered with FDA during the COVID-19 public health emergency, or PHE, solely for purposes of manufacturing OTC hand sanitizer products during the PHE, were not identified as facilities subject to the OMUFA facility fee for a certain time period. That time period, which extended beyond the end of the PHE, concludes on December 30th of 2024. If all you manufactured and distributed in the U.S. Was hand sanitizers under the PHE, there are two possibilities. If you plan to continue manufacturing hand sanitizers, then you must renew your registration and certify your drug listing for those hand sanitizers. Just be aware that you may be subject to OMUFA facility fees for fiscal year 2025, and be sure to pay those fees as required by law. But if you plan to discontinue manufacturing hand sanitizers by December 31, 2024, then deregister your facility with FDA and delist all your hand sanitizers as required by the provisions and 21 CFR 207. It is also recommended, certainly not required, but it's good practice to inactivate your FDA-assigned labeler code if you do not have any other drug listings with FDA, which, as mentioned in the previous presentations, you can always come back and reactivate if you come back to business. So we will wrap up the presentation with some challenge questions. Which statement is true? A, all OTC drug listing submissions currently reference the appropriate monograph ID. B, all OTC drug listing submissions should reference the appropriate monograph ID by September 30th, 2024. C, all OTC drug listing submissions should reference the appropriate monograph ID by December 31, 2024. Or D, none of the above. The correct answer is none of the above. There is no requirement to update your drug listing by a certain date, but obviously if you do not update it before December 31, 2024, but you remain in the market after December 31, 2024, then that will create a problem and your product is not certified, or your listing is not certified and will get inactivated. Challenge question 2. If you discontinue manufacturing hand sanitizers in November 2024 and continue manufacturing other OTC drugs, you may still be subject to OMUFA facility fees for fiscal year 2025. Is that false or true? And the answer is, it is true, because OMUFA facility fees are not only applicable to hand sanitizers for the fiscal year 2025. If you manufacture other OTC drugs, you may still be subject to OMUFA facility fees even after you discontinue your hand sanitizers. Challenge question 3, you won't be subject to OMUFA facility fees if you only manufactured hand sanitizers under PHE and you stop manufacturing them by, which of these dates are correct? A, September 1, 2024, B, September 30th, 2024, C, December 31, 2024, or D, September 30th, 2025. And as many of you have correctly identified, the correct answer is December 31, 2024. So if hand sanitizer was all you manufactured during the PHE and you stop manufacturing it, you must discontinue it by December 31, 2024, so you're not subject to OMUFA fees for 2025. So in summary, if you are an OTC drug manufacturer or distributor, there are two things you need to consider and follow by December 31, 2024. The first one would be to deregister and delist if you no longer manufacture hand sanitizers under PHE and you don't want to be subject to fiscal year 2025 OMUFA fees. And for all your drug listing submissions for OTC drugs, you must send an update to reference the latest marketing categories and appropriate marketing authorization if you remain in the market and beyond December 31, 2024, because then your drug will not be, your listing data will not be certified and therefore will get inactivated in January 2025. This page includes some links to useful OTC drug regulations, OMUFA, and also required registration and listing updates to your facilities and OTC drug listings. And with that, I'd like to invite you to listen to the next presentation on drug amount reporting presented by Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. Thank you for your attention.
OPQ Office of Quality Surveillance appreciates the invitation to speak at this year's Electronic Drug Registration and Listing Workshop. In this presentation, I will be providing an update on FDA's Drug Amount Reporting Program. Our office believes that everyone deserves confidence in their next dose of medicine. Pharmaceutical quality assures the availability, safety, and efficacy of every dose. After this presentation, you will learn about the key features of the Drug Amount Reporting Final Guidance that was issued earlier this year. Get more insight on Drug Amount Report submission structure. And learn a few tips on how to successfully upload drug amount reports. FDA updated the time frame for submitting drug amount reports. Reports for calendar year 2023 should be submitted no later than July 31, 2024. Reports for subsequent calendar years should be submitted no later than March 31 of the following calendar year. This means that reports for calendar year 2024 should be submitted no later than March 31, 2025. I would like to note that the portal is still open for registrants who have not yet submitted their calendar year 2023 reports. FDA clarified reporting for registrants across the drug supply chain, including contract manufacturers. This means that contract manufacturers should provide the amount of drug that they themselves manufactured, rather than the amount that other registrants further downstream in the drug supply chain manufactured. FDA clarified that in addition to reporting amount of active pharmaceutical ingredients manufactured, API manufacturers should also provide activity data for drugs formulated by activity, for example, heparin. If you have any question about reporting activity data for APIs, please do reach out to us using the contact information provided at the end of this presentation. FDA also implemented improved checks for errors in the portal. Submitters now receive informed notifications about errors that they may encounter during report submission. This slide shows the flowchart for submitting drug amount reports. It takes into consideration whether you're submitting a report for an API or a drug product. If you're submitting a report for an API, then the amount should be reported by mass or volume. This means that the unit of measure could be kilogram or liters. If you're submitting a report for drug product not in finished package form, for example, finished drug for further processing, then drug amount should be reported by dosage form unit. So, unit of measure could be number of tablets or capsules. If you're submitting a report for drug product in finished package form, then drug amount should be reported by number of packages. In the next 3 slides, I will highlight some of the data elements used in submitting drug amount reports, with emphasis on those data elements that were added in the final guidance. This slide contains data elements used in submitting reports for active pharmaceutical ingredients. Establishment dons, business operation, and NDC data elements are required for successful submission of a drug amount report. Mass/volume and unit of measure data elements are used to submit the amount of API manufactured. Activity unit of measure, average activity, and minimum activity data elements are optional and will only be used for drugs formulated by activity. And as I mentioned earlier, please reach out to us if you have any question about submitting activity data. The slide contains data elements used in submitting reports for drug product not in finished package form. Source NDC data element is used by repackers and relabelers to identify the NDC of the drugs that they received for repacking or relabeling. Quantity manufactured data element is used to submit the amount of drug that was manufactured. Quantity distributed non-US data element is used to submit the amount of the drug that was distributed outside of the United States. Quantity distributed is only needed if you intend to use drug amount reporting to fulfill 21 CFR 314.81 for the drug being reported. Intended to fulfill 21 CFR 314.81 data element is used to indicate if the report will be used to fulfill annual report requirements for new drug and abbreviated new drug application. This slide contains data elements used in submitting reports for drug product in finished package form. Outermost quantity manufactured data element is used to submit the amount of the drug that was manufactured based on the drug's outermost packaging. Outermost quantity distributed non-US data element is used to submit the amount of the drug that was distributed outside of the United States, and again is only needed if you intend to use drug amount reporting to fulfill 21 CFR 314.81 for the drug being reported. Innermost quantity manufactured data element is used to submit the amount of the drug that was manufactured based on the drug's innermost packaging. Innermost quantity distributed non-US data element is used to submit the amount of the drug that was distributed outside of the United States and is only needed if you intend to use drug amount reporting to fulfill 21 CFR 314.81 for the drug being reported. I would like to note that the outermost data elements are required for all drug products in finished package form, while innermost data elements are only required for finished drug products with multi-level packaging. Please review the Technical Conformance Guide for more information on how these data elements are used in submitting drug amount reports. This slide contains some useful tips for uploading drug amount data using CSV file. Please remember to read the CSV template instructions and be sure to use the correct template for the drug type being submitted. Use spreadsheet application like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets to populate the file. And save submission files as CSV extension instead of using Excel XLSX extension. And before submitting your report, please open a saved file in a word processing application like Notepad or MS Word to check for problems like leading zeros in establishment DUNS data element, or rows with only commas, which could indicate an empty row or record. Please take a moment to answer this challenge question. Which of the following statement is not true? A. Reports for calendar year 2024 should be submitted no later than March 31, 2025. B. API amount is reported by mass or volume. C. Contract manufacturers are not required to submit drug amounts. And D. Report structure for drug amount is based on drug type and packaging. The correct answer is C. Contract manufacturers are indeed required to submit drug amounts. This slide contains useful links on FDA drug amount reporting program. We have links to the drug amount reporting guidance, drug amount reporting technical conformance guide, and a reference guide for reporting drug amount. We also have links to the next-gen portal that is used in submitting drug amount reports and website for account sign-up by registrants or their authorized agents. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions during the Q&A panel section.
Hello everyone, my name is Yogesh Paruthi and I'm a Consumer Safety Officer in the Drug Registration and Listing Branch within OUDLC at FDA. Today I want to discuss about who should not register or list their products with the FDA. After participating in this session, you should be able to provide registration and listing exemptions. You should be able to explain the legal status conferred by registration and listing. You should also be able to describe the implications of an incorrect submission. So let's begin with registration and listing exemptions. As described under 21 CFR 207.13, pharmacies that operate in conformance with all applicable local laws regulating the practice of pharmacy and medicine, who do not manufacture, repack, relabel, or salvage drugs other than in the regular course of their business of dispensing or selling drugs at retail. Hospital, clinics, and other healthcare entities and public health agencies that operate establishments in conformance with all applicable local laws regulating the practice of pharmacy and medicine, who do not manufacture, repack, relabel, or salvage drugs other than in the regular course of their practice of pharmacy, including dispensing. Manufacturers, repackers, relabelers, or salvagers who manufacture, repack, relabel, or salvage drugs only for use in research, teaching, or chemical analysis and not for sale, including clinical trials. Manufacturers, repackers, and relabelers of harmless inactive ingredients such as excipients, colorings, flavorings, emulsifiers, lubricants, preservatives, or solvent that become components of drugs. Practitioners who are licensed by law to prescribe or administer drugs and who manufacture, repack, relabel, or salvage drugs only for use in their professional practice. Individuals or establishments under contract, agreement, or other arrangements with a registered establishment and engage solely in recovering cells or tissue and sending the recovered cells or tissue to the registered establishment to become components of a biological product are exempt from registration and listing under this part, unless FDA determines that drug establishment registration and listing is necessary for the protection of the public health. Please note, this is not a full list of all the exemptions. For a full list of exemption, please visit 21 CFR 207.13. Now that we know the exemptions, let's talk about what these exemptions have in common. First, they do not engage in the manufacturing, repackaging, relabeling, or salvaging of any drug for U.S. commercial distribution. Second, the drug that they manufacture does not enter U.S. commercial distribution. So why companies may incorrectly register and list? Some companies may use FDA registration and listing to falsely represent that FDA has stated their product is legal or approved. They want their product to appear as a drug in certain publication when it is not a drug. So do not register or list your products incorrectly, as it may be illegal. If you are not sure, send us an email and we can help or guide you to the correct office. So what does registration and listing legal status means? So FDA's acceptance of registration and listing form information, inclusion of a drug in our database of drugs, or assignment of an NDC does not denote approval of the establishment or the drug or any other drug of the establishment, nor does it mean that the drug may be legally marketed. To add what we just discussed, neither registration nor listing constitutes a determination by FDA that a product is a drug, as defined by Section 201(g)(1) of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Registration and listing may, however, be evidence that a facility intends to or does manufacture, repack, relabel, distribute, or salvage drugs, or that a product is intended to be a drug. Also, you could also be misbranded if you make any false representation that creates the impression that a drug is approved or is legally marketable because it appears in our databases of drugs. Therefore, you should not use FDA logo or use the term FDA registered to denote legitimacy or approval by FDA, or include the term FDA approved for a product that is not subject to FDA review and approval or is not approved by FDA. So what are the implications of an incorrect submission? You may be assessed and subject to other requirements such as user fees due, FDA inspections, CGMP requirements, and drug amount reporting requirements. So we have our first challenge question here. And the question is, you should list your drug product intended for use in clinical trials and not for sale. Is it A, true, or B, false? If you guessed false, you are correct. Okay, so it's time for our challenge question number 2. And the question is, you should register your establishment even though your drugs are not imported or offered for import into US. Is it A, true, or B, false? If you guessed false, you are correct. Challenge question number 3. A registered establishment is subject to FDA inspection. Is it A, true, or B, false? If you guessed A, true, you are correct. For more information about the topics covered today, here is the link to FDA's electronic drug registration listing instruction. In summary, products that are not drugs should not be listed. Facilities that do not manufacture or process drugs should not be registered. Questions will be answered in the live Q&A segment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you again to our presenters for this recent update session. Now we are in for a special treat. Up next here, we will have a fantastic case studies presentation by Dr. Julian Chun, Consumer Safety Officer with the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. Handing it over to you now, Dr. Chun.
Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon. My presentation will be case studies. So we will examine some cases that will hopefully wrap up everything and put everything that you've learned in this workshop together. So let's get. So what I would like for us to go through is to examine different cases to identify common listing errors. And then I would want you guys to be able to explain when a repackaged drug NDC must change. Okay, so for our first case, our manufacturer here, actually in this case repackager, will be Wonder Pharma, and they are repackaging ibuprofen 800 milligram tablets. They've assigned it NDC 55555-001-01, and they are repackaging them into 10 count blister packs. So Wonder Pharma has been sourcing this ibuprofen from Amazing Pharma. And that's the source NDC that they've been getting it from. Now they want to source it from a different manufacturer, maybe because of cost or for other reasons. And the new supplier is Fabulous Pharma, and their source NDC is 0014-6666. So with this situation, how should Wonder Pharma update its listing? Okay, so under our regulations 207.35, specifically B6, the proposed new NDC must include a new product code when there's a change to any of the following information. So when the drug's distinguishing characteristics, such as the size, the shape, the color, the code imprint, flavor, and if there's any change in the scoring, then you have to use a new product code. You can't use the same NDC. So this screenshot I have here is the SPL of the ibuprofen 800, which is a blue colored tablet, and it's got an imprint of 4444. Okay, so with that being the case, if the new contract manufacturers, this Fabulous Pharma's ibuprofen, differs from any of the above characteristics, it's a different color, it's a different shape, it doesn't have the same imprint, then Wonder Pharma must delist. So they must complete the marketing status of their current listing, and then they must change the marketing end date or add a marketing end date corresponding to the expiration date of the last lot that they repackaged from the previous source drug. And then they must create a new listing and assign a new NDC to their ibuprofen product because it has different characteristics. So they have to have a new NDC. Okay. Well, what if they talk to Fabulous and they say, "Hey, I don't want to deal with all that. I want you to make this ibuprofen to match the characteristics exactly of the old source drugs. So I want it to be blue. I want it to have an imprint of 4444. Well, after they do that, does that mean they don't have to make any changes to the listing? Well, no, they would still have to make updates. First and foremost, they have to remove the establishment, the Amazing Pharma, because that's the previous establishment, the previous source drug, and they're not using them anymore. So they got to take them out. Then they have to add the new establishment manufacturing the drug. So then they have to add in Fabulous Pharma. So in this case, Wonder Pharma may retain the same NDC because there's in the regulation, it's matching everything. However, what we strongly recommend is that Wonder assign this new NDC, this new drug, a new NDC, to maintain an accurate and up-to-date listing data. So that's our recommendation. All right, so now let's follow Wonder Pharma and their ibuprofen journey in this new case. Here I have an excerpt of the House Applied section in the content of labeling. So as you see here, it's an ibuprofen 800 milligram tablet. It's colored blue. It's capsule shaped. And it's film coated and it's engraved with 4444 on the one side. So you see here on NDC of 0012444401 bottles of 1000, and I just highlight that just for you to be able to remember that, and then all the other stuff that you would see in house applied, the storage and RX only and whatnot. And so remembering that highlighted section, this is the what Wonder Pharma has inputted into their SPL. And let me get my pointer here. It's kind of hard to see, I apologize, but the product NDC is 5555001. That's the NDC that Wonder Pharma has assigned to their repackaged drug. They want to name it Wonder Drug, but it's an ibuprofen tablet. And the source NDC, this was from Amazing the 4444. As far as the packaging is concerned, they have assigned data package code of 01, and it's a blister pack of 10 capsules each, and it's not a combination product. So this is the SPL. How does everything look? Does it look good? Any changes necessary? Well, let's see. So in the house applied section, it cites that the NDC and bottle size is 0012-444401, and it's bottles of 1000. So that I highlighted that because the content of labeling should reflect the repackaged drug. So the repackaged drug is ibuprofen that's repackaged into 10 count blister packs. So this error, we actually see it a lot. It's most likely due to them copying and pasting the entire content of labeling from the source drug and not making any updates to it to reflect that this is their repackaged drug product. So as you see, there's a mismatch in the NDC and package error that exists in the house applied section and also the SPL. So please note that repackagers NDC must be reflected in the SPL, the entire content of labeling, and that includes not just the house applied section that I mentioned, but also the principal display panel. So that's the example image that you guys upload, and if you guys are uploading, it must reflect the label, your label, not the source NDC's label, because this is your listing if you're the repackager. Okay, so this next case study number 3, I want to talk about marketing categories. So in order to commercially distribute drug products in the US, you must have an authority to do so, like a legal pathway. So one of those is through the application process. You submit an application with FDA. This is my drug. This is how I'm going to use it. This is the labeling, everything. And we review it, and then we approve it or reject it. And then if it's approved, your application will get a number with it that you can cite in your listing. So the NDA is the new drug application. The ANDA is the abbreviated new drug application for generic drugs. The BLA is the biologics license applications for biologic drugs. Another way to bring drug products into the U.S. is to use an OTC monograph. So we published an OTC monograph and updated through administrative orders. And these monographs tell you the drugs that you can use, the labeling, the strength, everything. And if you make the drug exactly like it's cited in the OTC monograph, then you can legally market in the US. So anything that's not part of the application or the OTC monograph is considered unapproved. And an example of that would be homeopathic. So in this case study, we're going to follow Wonder Pharma's ibuprofen 800 milligrams. So in it, you see that the marketing status is active. They started marketing it in 2017, and they're saying that their authority to market it in the US is through an OTC monograph drug, and the application number they're citing is M013 for internal analgesics, antipyretics, and anti-rheumatic drug products for over-the-counter use. So OTC monograph M013, it does not cite 800 milligrams in that monograph. So as I mentioned before, if you're going to use an OTC monograph citation in your listing, you have to follow the monograph exactly. And 800 milligram is not an OTC strength. So in order to be able to use this, to do this legally, you have to use an ANDA. Okay, so then they say, all right, that's right. That was just a mistake. Let me switch to ANDA. So Wonder Pharma puts ANDA 078392. Well, is this an error? Let's look at it. So the way they input it into CDER Direct, it's the active, the start date, the ANDA, and then they input it. Okay. Unfortunately, 078392 ANDA is for granisetron. The correct ANDA is most likely 078329. That's for ibuprofen 800. So we don't see it a lot, but we do see it. These are like transpositional errors. But we'll also see random application numbers where you don't really understand why they use the application number, so they've used the wrong application number. Other things we see is that the application numbers that they've cited is they don't have the right of reference, meaning they do not have permission from the application holder to use their application, but they're citing it anyways. So these are common marketing errors that we're seeing, as I mentioned above, the incorrect application numbers or unauthorized use of these application numbers, as well as the incorrect OTC monograph that they're not citing properly, or they're not updating the citation of the OTC monograph. After there's been an update, sometimes they update the citation, and that's not being updated in the listing. So I want to remind you guys that all of the above errors misbrands the drug product and subjects the listing for further compliance action. So in summary, changes in the source drug requires drug listing updates and may require a new NDC. Repackaged drug listings must reflect the repackager's NDC, the correct package size and description, not just in the SPL, but also in the entire content of labeling. And marketing categories must be an accurate reflection of a drug's authority to market the drug products in the US. So thank you very much. We will take questions after this presentation. If you guys do have questions for us later, feel free to email us at eDRLS@fda.hhs.gov. Or if you have a technical question about how to submit something, the more appropriate email is cderdirect@fda.hhs.gov. Thank you.
All right. Another thank you again to our presenters for their spectacular presentations. We will now begin our question and answer panel to include all presenters from this afternoon's sessions. If you haven't had a chance to enter your questions into the Q&A chat pod, please do so now, and we'll answer as many questions as time allows. And so we've had quite a few questions come in already. We'll start with a question that came in addressed for Troy Koo. Troy, will ESG submission eventually be phased out to use FDA Direct for drug listings? Okay, Troy, if you're speaking, we're not quite hearing you yet. Maybe you might be on mute. Okay, and perhaps check for any double mute there. If that might not be working, we can go on to our next question. Okay, so let's see. We'll try another question for a different presenter until we get that troubleshooted. All right. Our next question will go for Dr. Yogesh Paruthi. Question for you. If I update my drug listing SPL in May, do I need to send a blanket no changes notification in June?
Thank you for this question. If a firm updates a drug listing anytime during the calendar year, that listing is certified through December 31st of the following calendar year. So what that means is if the listing was updated in May, a blanket no changes certification does not need to be submitted. Our system just won't even let you allow to select that listing to certify. And just to clarify, blanket no changes certification is only available from October 1st through December 31st and not in the June. Now, since we are talking about the blanket no changes certification, I wanted to remind everyone that blanket no changes certification only affects drug listing. It has no effect on establishment registration renewal. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We have another question for you, Dr. Pruthi. Where can I find additional requirements about listing updates?
Thanks, Nora. So that is a great question. I noticed a lot of questions coming in related to this topic, such as material changes, etc. So overall, you want to refer to 21 CFR 207.57. That has all the information related to what listing information updates you need to submit when you're updating your SPLs. Thank you.
Thank you again. Another question for you. How do I delist my product?
Thank you for the question. So to delist your product, you want to access your most recent submission accepted SPL that you would like to delist. You want to create a new version. You want to change the marketing status from active to complete. And then the most important thing here is you want to provide the expiration date of the last lot that was manufactured. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And sorry, another question related to that for you. Is it necessary to delist my product even though it's no longer in commercial distribution?
Oh, that's an excellent question. We actually, during our surveillance, we come across a lot of these listings. A lot of times, folks would, will have their product deactivated. They would never delist them. So please note that you should delist because an inactivated listing is not in compliance. Thank you.
All right, thank you again, Dr. Pruthi, for all those responses. Now we'll go back to Troy Koo to see if we've resolved the audio issue. So again, the question was, will ESG submission eventually be phased out to use FDA Direct for drug listings?
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes.
hear me now? Okay,
Yep, you're
sorry.
good.
Okay, thanks for the question. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think ESG is going to go away anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Another question for you, Troy Q. If I need to submit an update on the formula for a previously approved OTC product, what is the process?
Thank you for the question. So to update a listing, you will have to go to the most recent product listing that you want to update, and then click on the new version. And then from there, you should be able to make any change that you would like. Just so keep in mind that anytime you're making a change, especially in the data element section, most likely you're going to require to have a manual override. Okay. So to do that, you can send an email to our SBL team, which is the sbl.fda.hhs.gov. Make sure that you provide, if you're using a CDER Direct, you provide them the submission ID number. If you're using the ESG, then you will provide a core ID number along with the error message and the reason why you're making a change. Thank you.
Thank you again for that response. Another question for you. Our OTC drug products were listed by an outside consultant. We would like to do the annual listing certification. Do we need a new labeler code number?
Thank you for the question. No, you're actually certifying an existing product, so therefore you do not need a new labeler code. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Another question that came in for you. If you have more than one source for a product, which one should you choose as a source for NDC? Or is there a way to list them all, assuming that you are a repacker?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, as of right now, you can only enter one source NDC per product. So if you have two sources, I would suggest send us an email, and then we'll look into this further, and then we can get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you as well for that response. And now we'll address some questions that came in for Dr. Tasneem Hussain. If an establishment relabels a product by definition, this activity will fall under manufacturer. Can the establishment be listed as manufacturer in the SPL and on the labels?
Question, yes. So yes, repackaging and relabeling activities do fall under the overall definition of manufacturing. But if the repackager or relabeler is putting the product in the market under their name and they're distributing it, then the submission must correctly identify the establishment as a repackager or relabeler, sorry. And, so the correct business operation should be chosen. And you can clarify further the business operations using the business operation qualifiers. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. Another question for you. I see that each drug listing must contain the repackaging information. Can you please define the repackaging for me? For example, our manufacturer A is doing the filing and inner packaging for OTC sunscreen products. Then we have transfer products to manufacturer B to add an outer packaging. In this case, does A list need to add the B site as repackaging?
That's a good question too. Thank you. So the definition of repackaging is found under 21 CFR 207.1, along with other definitions such as relabeling. So the definition of repackaging is it means the act of taking a finished drug product or unfinished drug from the container in which it was placed in commercial distribution and placing it into a different container without manipulating, changing, or affecting the composition or formulation of the drug. So what you're describing here would not be considered repackaging. It would be just another part of the manufacturing process. So site B would not be considered manufacturer or would not be considered a repackager in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much as well. We have another question for you, Dr. Hussein. Which marketing category should CMOs use for the products they manufacture and list under their labeler code to avoid confidential information being available on DailyMed?
Okay, that's another good question. Thank you for the question. So contract manufacturers have several choices of marketing categories, and those are usually identified when you see the term product manufactured under contract. You'll be able to spot them from that. So you choose the appropriate choice depending on the type of product you have. For example, if you have an approved drug product manufactured under contract or unapproved drug product manufactured under contract, or it could be an OTC monograph drug product manufactured under contract. So these choices are available, from our structured product labeling resources page, which you can find the link under our office's drug registration and listing webpage. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question for you. If there is a compliance case, then the manual override will not be completed?
That's a good question. Thank you. Yes, so if there's a compliance open, doesn't mean that it won't be completed. It just means that we need to first review the file to make sure that it's been updated and to make sure that the deficiency that we identified has been addressed and resolved. An override won't be completed unless our office approves it first. So this can only happen if we review the file for accuracy and completeness. And then when that's done, when we know that everything has been corrected properly, then we request the override from the SPL coordinator. And then once he performs the override, then at that point, we can close the compliance case. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for the response. Now we have some questions that came in for Dr. Vika Sarora. First question, how do you list a co-packaged product with one component that's an unapproved item?
Thank you for that question. So you will still list this as a kit product, and for the unapproved component, you will select the appropriate unapproved marketing category that applies to that constituent part. Thank you.
Thanks so much for clarifying that. Next question for you. For combination products, e.g. a drug and a pump, both manufactured by different companies, do you have to list the manufacturer of the device and all the establishments that the device company uses for testing?
Thank you for that question. So I'm assuming in this case, the question is referring to co-packaged drug device products. So in this case, if CDER is the lead, you will select kit for the dosage form and identify the constituent parts. For the non-drug components, you will not include an NDC. And regarding the manufacturer's reference, you will include all drug manufacturers only that are involved with the listing. For CDRH requirements, please reach out to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. One more question for you, Dr. Aurora. We listed a drug product in May and it will be marketed in June. However, we didn't update the product in June. Will the product be inactivated?
Again, thank you for that question. So I'm not sure what the specific situation that is being referenced here, but if your initial listing has correct information with the correct future start marketing date and there are no updates, then the listing is okay. But it won't become an active listing regardless until the start marketing date is reached. But however, if, for example, an establishment reference in these listings becomes inactive, then that listing, after receiving a notification early July of the upcoming July inactivation, will be activated at the end of July unless that relevant establishment is updated accordingly. Please note we encourage listing updates to be made as soon as possible, but at the latest June or December of each year. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those responses. And now we'll move on to some questions that came in addressed to David Mazik. let's see, first question here. Sorry, just had it. Okay. My firm has 3 different facilities in the same premises. Do I need to use the DUNS number for the building where manufacturing is taking place for NDC reservations?
Interesting question, and thank you for that. Yes, that DUNS number for the manufacturer, and in this instance, one site location will be referenced in that registration file. And so the reservation would reflect all of the sites that are referenced under that singular DUNS number and the singular FEI that's assigned to that location. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. Next question is for you as well. Is there a way to confirm a proposed product code has not been used before when it is for an already approved product that is adding a new strength or dosage form?
Thanks again for another great question. So in most cases, we strongly encourage firms to maintain, obviously, the inventory under a specific labeler code of all of the products. But in an instance wherein they submit a reservation for a specific uh, product number, the system will provide them with an error message if indeed that product number has already been used, either reserved for another product and or reserved or actually linked to a listed product, a completed listing. Thank you.
Thank you again for that response. Another question for you, um, or at least addressed to David Mazik. In this CDER Direct, we understand the NDC reservation can be made at the product code level. Is there an option to reserve the NDC for a new pack count with a future marketing date? As recently we have noticed that listings with a future starting marketing date are appearing in the Daily Med database based on the ANDA start marketing date.
Another great question. So, as a caveat to this, keep in mind these are two separate processes, and so the NDC reservation is for pre-market, as I mentioned in my slide, pre-market uh, activities. And so, in an instance where a firm has a complete submission, we strongly encourage them to send in a completed drug listing submission. And that will enable them to reference the appropriate start marketing date. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response as well. We do have one more question for you. As part of the NDC reservation process, is the product code initially proposed by the CMO or proposed by FDA, or could it be either?
Great question. And thank you again, Nora. That product code is obviously proposed by the firm. The firm decides which product code they want to assign to specifically to a drug product. The only portion of that NDC that the agency will assign, obviously, is the labeler code. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we'll have some questions that came in for Dr. Leila um, Raju Esfandiari. First question, this is a question on the 14-day listing requirement after application approval. Is a listing of the product required in the 14-day window? Say an applicant was looking for a distributor of their product at the time of approval, but the FDA reviewer required a listing within 14 days of approval. So the applicant had to request a labeler code for themselves to create NDCs saying they were a distributor listing the product with the start marketing date in the future. So again, could you clarify, is the listing of the product required in the 14-day window?
So I will do my best to address the situation. I have to clarify that FDA does not require listing within 14 days of the approval. What you see in an approval letter that is sent to applicants after a drug is reviewed and approved by FDA is a request to submit labeling within 14 days. And the only way you can submit your labeling to FDA is through the structured product labeling format in your drug listing. So as a result, by default, companies look into drug listing as a way to submit their labeling within 14 days as requested in the approval letter. So what's going to happen is that because the drug listing is tied to commercial distribution of the drug, and you may not start commercial distribution within 14 days for different reasons, what you can do is to list the product, but put a future start marketing date, which is your expected launch date of the product. If anything changes between when you submit that SPL and the actual marketing start date, you can go back and revise the SPL to change some of the elements that you're allowed to change before actually marketing the product.
Thank you so much for that clarification. We have another question for you. What is the time frame for the June review? Is there a plan to institute a window similar to the EOY October to December window for the June review?
So the drug listing review and update has always been the months of June and December. Like many of my colleagues emphasized, we want that information and we recommend that information or any changes are submitted earlier than June or December at the time of change. But if you are waiting for those required timeframes to update your drug listing, it will be the entire month of June and entire month of December. There is no plan in changing it. If we change it ever, there has to be a change in the regulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response as well. Another question that is addressed to you, Dr. Leila Raju Spangieri. How do the updates required under CDER Direct correlate to required updates to DailyMed or needed by a CMO and or applicant holder, if any?
So again, that needs to be clarified that DailyMed includes the drug listing submissions to FDA. The drug listing SPLs that are submitted to FDA, certain categories are actually sent to DailyMed, and that happens every weekday in the afternoon. A file is sent to DailyMed, and the drug listing submissions basically are published along with the labeling of those products. So DailyMed does not have any update requirements. The listing requirements and subsequent update requirements to those listing submissions are FDA requirements. So anything that you submit to FDA has to meet the listing requirements, as my colleagues mentioned, under 21 CFR 207, and follow the update requirements. And those updates are then transmitted to DailyMed once they are revised and sent to FDA.
Great. Thank you again for that response. We have one more question for you. If a manufacturer has gone out of business and a PLD wants to submit an end of marketing date listing, how can it be done? The validator only recognizes listings with an active drugs establishment on record.
That is actually not correct. When you're delisting a drug, and so therefore you change the product status to complete, you have to include all manufacturing establishment in the SPL as required under 207, 21 CFR 207, but some of them may actually be out of business or have deregistered already. So our validations are not checking for an active registration for products that are being discontinued.
Thank you so much for that response. And now we'll move on to some questions that came in for Lieutenant Commander Sujin Park. First question here for you. Can you explain NDC assignments for co-packaged products and multi-level packaged drugs?
Thank you for that question. I hope I can help clarify NDC assignments to these two types of drugs. As I mentioned in my presentation, for the purposes of drug listing, co-packaged drugs are considered kits. And within a kit, there is a CDER or CBER-led single package of two or more different products, basically co-packaged together, where at least one of the co-packaged product is a drug or biological product. Therefore, NDC for the kit should be different than the NDC assigned to any of the individual drugs or biological products included in the kit. As an example, if there is a kit containing 2 single-dose vials for injection and 2 vials of diluent, such as like a phosphate buffering solution, NDC for the kit should be different from NDC assigned to the single-dose vials as well as the diluent. And in addition, if there are any non-drug parts associated with the kit's listing, NDC should not be assigned to non-drug parts. And for multi-level package, which includes different levels of packaging for one drugs, I used the example of a carton containing a blister pack of a solid dosage oral dosage form, or a carton containing multiple vials of an injectable. Since the package code segment of the NDC identifies unique package size and type, you should assign a different package code to each level of packing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We have another question for you. Can we reuse the NDC after it's been discontinued?
Thank you for that question. We get this question all the time. So NDC cannot be reused after the product has been discontinued. However, as I mentioned in my presentation, if a discontinued drug resumes marketing without any changes made to the previously listed drug, then the previously assigned NDC should be used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. One more question for you, Lieutenant Commander Park. When do we need to assign a new NDC for a listed product?
Thank you for that question. Another question that we get all the time. So a new NDC must be assigned to a listed drug product if there are changes to following, and this is identified in 21 CFR 20735 BNC. So any change in drug's established name or proprietary name, if there is a change in active ingredient or strength or dosage form, drug status, drug's intended use, and or any changes to the drug's distinguishing characteristics, such as the color or shape of the tablet. Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, and now we have some questions that came in for Opina Oju. First question for you. For products manufactured by CMOs in finished primary packaged by not secondary packaged, how should this be reported? Okay, we might. Oh, there we go. We can hear you.
Yeah, so thank you. That's a very good question. The obligation to report drug amount reports actually belongs to the registrant, right? So if you're registered and identified in a drug listing file as engaged in the manufacture of a drug, then you're required to submit drug amount report. So it doesn't really matter whether where you are in the supply chain, but if the listing identifies you as engaged as a manufacturer of that product, then you're required to submit drug amount. Thank you.
Thank you for that response as well. We do have another question for you. When a manufacturer or registrant located outside the USA ships bulk quantities of a product to the US for repackaging and distribution under private label NDCs, all are responsible for the annual volume reporting? Should the manufacturer report bulk finished product quantities released under the bulk NDCs and the US agent who handles the PLD NDCs? Or is the report or is it required to report distributed quantities against each private label NDC?
So thank you again for this question, and I think we get these types of questions a lot from registrants. So I think that the key thing is really to look at the listing for a particular drug, right? So it's about the establishment that is engaged in the manufacture of the drug product. So, and actually that's one of the things we try to clarify in the final guidance, that regardless of where you are in the supply chain, if you are currently registered and you're listed in the listing as engaged in the manufacture of the drug product, then you're required to submit the amount that you yourself manufactured, regardless of what happens downstream with that particular drug product. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. Another question for you. Are OTC drugs such as sunscreens subject to the reporting?
Yes. So all listed drugs are subject to drug amount reporting, except for those that were exempt, but those are mostly biological products. So yes, if the product is listed with FDA, then we expect the registrant, especially the manufacturers, to submit the amount of that drug that they manufactured for that particular calendar year. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And actually, another question for you as well. We are manufacturing an API in Mexico. Do we have to use a new report submission?
So it depends. Again, the drug amount reporting is tied to how a drug is registered and listed with FDA. So if you're an API manufacturer in Mexico and you're identified as the manufacturer of that product, then we expect you to report or submit drug amount report for that product. So it depends on how you're listed in a particular drug as a manufacturer. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much as well. Now we have another question that came in for Dr. Leila Raju Esfandiari. Does the FDA have an effective date for the new NDC format?
Thank you for that question. We actually got quite a few questions in reference to the effective date. So I need to make sure that we clarify here that what is in place right now is a proposed rule. Please keep that in mind. We are working towards finalizing the rule, and you will know when it's finalized and published. But until then, it remains to be a proposed rule. So there are no effective dates. Everything in the presentation that I had on the NDC format and everything that was discussed about a future format, a possible future format of the NDC is what is proposed. What is proposed now is that the effective date of the final rule after it's published will be delayed for 5 years. So because we don't have a published date, we don't have an effective date yet. But once it's published, it will lay out exactly what the expectations are. If it actually is finalized as proposed or there will be any changes, it remains to be seen.
Thank you very much for that response. Another question for you. Is OTC drug listing or having an NDC for OTC mandatory?
Thank you for that question. So any drug that is subject to drug listing requirements, including OTC drugs are required to have an NDC. Keep in mind that, as we discussed in our presentations today, inclusion of the NDC on a drug label is not a requirement under labeling requirements. So if you see an OTC drug that does not include an NDC, and one example could be fluoride toothpaste, it doesn't mean it's not assigned an NDC. So let's just make sure we have those two concepts separate, because that fluoride toothpaste is a drug, should be listed, and should have an NDC assigned to it.
Thanks so much. Another question for you. If my product was originally submitted under the OTC monograph not final category and has not been assigned an updated OTC monograph, how should the SPL be updated?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, the old marketing categories for OTC monograph drugs, final and not final, do not exist anymore. We allowed products to actually continue being certified last year because those new categories went into place on October 1st, 2023, as I mentioned. But this year, you will not be able to certify your drug listing if they are included under the old marketing categories that are not relevant or applicable anymore, or the old CFR citations. So OTC drug manufacturers and distributors that have drug listing with FDA and should update their drug list and should certify their drug listing to be current for the next year. If they intend to continue manufacturing and distributing, they must actually access their listing SPLs updated with the correct reference to the marketing category and relevant monograph ID if applicable, and send those updated versions. And that will actually certify their products throughout the next year. So they don't need to go through the certification. They can't actually go through the certification with those old information.
Thank you so much for that response. And now we'll get in some questions that were addressed to Dr. Julian Chun. Dr. Chun, would I need to create a new NDC for the same formulation with the same characteristics, but manufacturers from two different manufacturers in order to meet a large order?
Thank you for that question. So you would not need to create a new NDC, but you would need to include both establishments in the listing so that it reflects that your drug product is being made by by two different facilities.
Thank you for that response. Another question for you. What should be used as marketing start date when listing as a CMO? In our case, the product itself was initially marketed about a year ago, but our establishment has just begun manufacturing the products. So for the marketing start date, should we use the initial marketing date of the product or the date that our establishment began manufacturing the product?
Thank you for that question. So for the CMO listing, so if you're the contract manufacturer, your listing should reflect the marketing start date when you started making the drug product. So if you just started making it, you should use the date that you started making it. The PLD listing, the private label distributor listing, would have the start marketing date from when they started marketing it, but the CMO listing is when you started manufacturing it. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Thank you again for that response. We actually have another question that came in for you as well. In your example, if Wonder Pharma had a site in New York and one in LA, would that 10-count blister pack have a separate NDC based on the site it was packaged, assuming source NDC is the same?
Thanks for that question. No, the site does not determine the NDC. So a site made in New York and a drug made in New York and a drug made in LA, as long as it's being made the same, should retain the same NDC. And like the previous example, if both establishments should be included in the listing so that each place where the drug is being made is reflected within the drug listing. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that response. Now we'll have another question that came in for Dr. Vikas Arora. Could you please clarify whether the drug listing must be submitted in June and December in order to avoid the inactivation of drug product, even though the no blanket change is only available during October through December?
Thank you for that question. The short answer is no. You will only submit a listing when an update is required. If you've submitted an updated version of your drug listing SPL during the current calendar year, then your listing is certified. If you have not, if October 1st comes around and you have not required any updates to your drug listing throughout the year, and all of your information in your drug listing remains correct, at that time you could complete a blanket no change certification certifying that your listing or listings are accurate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We'll actually address a question now that came in for Dr. Yogesh Paruthi. Can the marketing status be switched from complete back to active to easily relist a drug product?
Thank you for the question. So yes, only if the exact same product resumes commercial distribution, it can be relisted by changing marketing status back to active. But please note, the registrant must propose a new and unique NDC for a drug when there is a change after the drug is initially marketed. So if you are looking for a full list of what changes require new NDC, you want to refer to 21 CFR 207.35. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question for you as well. If I am updating outdated information, is it important that the end marketing date selected be a specific date, or can the updating date be used?
Thanks, Nara. So our regulation required that the marketing end date should correspond to the expiration date of the last lot that was manufactured. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Okay, I guess maybe sorry, let's see. We still have a few questions that came in, so I guess we'll continue on going with some questions here. Let's see, I can go to some questions now. Back to Dr. Leila Raju Esfandiari. This question for you, if you are currently manufacturing OTC monograph drugs, what is the fee for 2025?
Thank you for that question. So our office does not set up fees, whether they are OMUFA or GDUFA or other fees that are required to be paid to FDA. You have to, there was a Federal Register notice for the fiscal year 2025 OMUFA fees that was published in July of 2024. So I would invite you, and the link to that FRN is actually included at the end of my presentation on that OTC drugs updates. So you can click on that, and I think you will find it there, but it is basically published and managed by Office of Financial Management in FDA.
All right, thank you so much. And we have another question for you as well. Does the marketing start date need to be updated in eDRLS after the first sales of the product?
So drug listing is, as I mentioned, reflective of commercial distribution. And commercial distribution is something that is defined under our regulations in 21 CFR 207.1. It's basically any distribution. And for example, for imported drugs, it starts with importation. I think that will answer some of the other questions we got on that subject, but please think of it as a commercial distribution, not necessarily sale, and not necessarily the marketing activities, but as it's defined under 207.1.
All right. Thank you again so much for that response and all the information. I think that may be all the questions that we have time for. Once again, just thank you to our presenters for all the excellent information and insights.